Hello, this is Ross Pittman of Conscious Life News, and I'm very, very pleased today to have Leah Guy on the call with me. She is the author of the book, The Fearless Path, and subtitled A Radical Awakening to Emotional Healing and Inner Peace. And there's some really great testimonials on the back of the book. I'm just going to read you the first one because this one really speaks to me. I've read the book, and I totally agree with this first testimonial. It says, "This book is quite simply a remarkable toolkit of proven strategies to address the root cause of cravings, addictions, anxiety, and guilt. The Fearless Path is a step-by-step plan for radical self-healing and inner peace, which will inspire and elevate as a standalone guide or in conjunction with other treatments. You will love this book." And I will say, I love this book. This quote's from Anne Louise Gittleman, PhD, author of the book, The New Fat Flush Plan. So anyway, I agree with that quote. This is an awesome book. And so we're just going to talk to Leah a little bit about her book. Well, before we get into your book, why don't you just tell us about yourself and what led you to writing this book?
Sure. Well, I've been doing healing work for about 22 years. And I came to that, like many people do, out of my own need for healing. I had gone through a series of, I would say, very intense emotional issues when I was younger, such as my parents divorcing. I also had extreme anxiety as a child into my teen years. I developed an eating disorder, primarily, I think, due to my own emotional sensitivity and not feeling like I had the support that I needed or like I was being heard. And then I eventually, I had an aunt that was murdered. I had several things go on in my youth, as do many people. And then when I was in my young 20s, I went through a sexual assault or rape. And it was kind of where everything came together and culminated in a lockdown. I wasn't okay. I'd been functioning prior to that. And at this point, I knew I needed some different kind of help. And so I started exploring options aside from therapy and traditional drugs and so forth. And I began learning about meditation and energy healing and the more esoteric back then. It was the alternative treatments, and they really they not only helped me, but they helped shift the paradigm in my mind about spirituality, about emotional health, about mental health. And I was able to change my life, essentially. And that's what people do ever since.
Awesome. You run a healing center, don't you?
I do. Actually, the healing center, we're closing this fall for a few months so I can focus on teaching and speaking and being out more. And I need to find a new location anyway. But we have a brand of products. We have different therapists that I work with. And yeah, it's good.
Nice. Well, let's get into the book, The Fearless Path.
Yeah.
For me, I think, and it's right in the subtitle, it's about radical awakening to emotional healing. So maybe you can describe for us, what is emotional healing?
Well, that's a great question. And it sounds like a common question, but in fact, most people give the idea of health and wellness to the physical body or to the mind. And even when we get into a place of emotional disease or emotional unhealth, we still can contribute it back to the mind oftentimes. And there's not a real strong place for emotional health. When we think about therapy, for example, we think that's a place or a person or a system to help us work with what's going on in our life. But oftentimes for people, they go and they work with, stress at work or stress in a relationship or anxiety, which always gets attributed to the mind. And I think that emotional health is key to not only physical health, but also mental health and our spiritual well-being. Because it's the fluid that runs through our life. It's what informs all of our other parts of our being. And when we aren't giving our emotional health the due respect, then we're kind of constantly out of balance and always seeking for some other, fix, if you will. And it's just not working. Our mind, obviously, there is mental aggravation, there's mental imbalance, there's chemical imbalance. there is a real thing called mental health, but the mind is also always communicating with and translating the emotional health, the emotional bodies, the emotional that we're having. And oftentimes that's too much for the mind to break down. And then it gets like a separation between mind and emotions, between mind and body. And then we kind of start disconnecting from the self.
Mm.
So I think it's a key element. I'm passionate to try to help bring emotional health more into the forefront.
Nice. Yeah. I once heard a phrase, emotions are energy in motion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I know that our bodies are energetic, and I know your book is focused around the chakras. And so I believe that when we suppress our emotions, things can get stuck, and that's where, problems can arise from that. And you talk about why detachment doesn't work. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit now.
Yeah, this is getting a lot of attention, I guess, in the book because, as you know, many gurus and philosophers and even spiritual and religious kind of groups are promoting the idea of detachment and letting go, if you will. And while that might be a decent idea for some of our understanding of the physical world and not getting attached to things and having stuff kind of define who we are, emotionally, when we detach, we are detaching from both the positive and the negative. And, it's really interesting. I always say for people, especially seekers and spiritualists, that, the talk about that we are all one, that we are all connected, that there is the cosmic kind of universality of all things. And then they turn and talk about detaching. You can't be connected and detached at the same time. It's not kind of a pick and choose, off of a menu, what we're going to experience in this world. And so I think we need to learn how to be attached to our real experiences, be attached to what has led us to this current moment. That doesn't mean we have to relive it constantly, but it means we need to integrate the emotions, the lessons, the memories, the experience into our being, so that we are now whole and can move forward with the strength. This detachment idea, I always think of it in the book. I talk about a pillar, and we can either add to the pillar and add strength inside of our core, or we can chip away at the pillar for every nook, every situation we didn't like, and tear it down. And if we do that, we're going to have a very fragmented and weak pillar that eventually might. And that's not where we want to come from. That is that causes a lot of really severe mental and emotional issues in the long run.
Right on. Whew. I love the organization of your book. I love the simplicity of it. There's elegance in the way that it's organized by chakra, and maybe you can speak to that, why you chose that way to present the material.
Well, I didn't reinvent the wheel or anything. I was using the energy system as a guide, because as I work with clients, I see, our stories are all different. The book is full of stories, my stories, other, client stories. So our stories are always different, but it all kind of funnels into just a handful of issues that we're all experiencing, be it guilt or shame or grief and heartache. And these things are corresponded to how the energy of the chakras govern our physical body, our emotional, mental, and spiritual body. So to me, maybe it was for simplicity's sake for myself. I'm not a great writer. Well, I will say I feel divinely inspired to write the book, and I love to share information. But writing doesn't come easy for me. So, for me, I also needed it to be where it makes sense for me, where it makes sense, like speaking to a client. I want to be able to relate information in a way that's understandable, that complete sense. And so to do that, I have to really deliver the simple form of the information.
Nice.
I appreciate the compliment, though. I was happy with the way it got laid out as well.
Yeah. Each chapter has one or more emotional workouts. That's probably one of my most favorite parts of the book, and I think it's really brilliant, actually. And so maybe you can just talk about what those are in general, and if you want, give a specific example.
Sure. Well, the emotional workouts, they're very similar to physical workouts. Even if someone is working with a healer or a therapist or what have you, I believe just like for our physical bodies that we need regular practice for our emotional bodies. We forget, we get lazy, we don't want to process. We don't want to
Mm.
self-care the way we should. And so
Mm.
I coined this term emotional workouts to remind people, what kind of emotional workout are we doing today?
Mm.
And in the book, what's interesting is, the resistance when people go, oh, I probably need that. And I can tell automatically it's going to be like asking somebody to get up and run 3 miles. I probably need to run 3 miles too. The emotional workouts aren't all heavy lifting. There's some really fun, practical ones in there, like gardening or, getting more creative in certain ways and freeing our expression and moving the energy and dancing, so some of them are really fun and some of them are a little bit more cathartic and,
Mm.
journaling and writing and that kind of thing. But hopefully the goal is that as we pay attention to our emotional self, it starts freeing and allowing us to be whole, to be present, to be
Mm.
engaged in our true experience. So that's what they're for.
Nice. And you also have a meditation in each chapter, I believe, at the end of each chapter, associated with the seven chakras. Maybe address that a little bit.
Yeah, I put a meditation at the end of each chapter just to encourage people to, especially those that aren't regular meditators, to just get a little more mindful about the energy and the process of their emotional reality. And in fact, I teach meditation every week, so the book inspired
Mm.
record an audio. So I recorded a CD, a guided chakra meditation CD that it kind of accompanies the book, and they're inspired from the meditations in the book, but they're more full. They're 10-12 minute meditations with music and guidance and so
Mm.
forth. So I just think for meditation is getting a lot of attention lately, but there's still a lot of people, including those who quote meditate, who aren't meditating,
Mhm.
and sometimes that's me too. I have to be reminded early in the morning, or so I figured if someone's doing this kind of work, it's just a nice, gentle reminder of, let's just stop for a second and read a few lines and get into that space.
Mm. Yeah, nice. I like that a lot. I really love this book. Um, Another thing I love about the book is the tool that you presented called spiritual mapping. Could you talk to that a little bit?
Sure. That kind of came about in a workshop, and it's a really good. You can do it on your own, and I led a spiritual mapping exercise in the book, but it's really nice to do as, I don't know, kind of a trajectory of maybe where someone's not satisfied in their life. And so the idea is that we start at the heart, and then we compare. We don't compare, but we journey from the heart to the point of dissatisfaction. I think in the book I made an analogy of someone being in a relationship when they still feel lonely or they're dissatisfied in the relationship. There's a point along the journey where we're still very much connected to our heart and we're making choices. And each step along the path is either a choice of our heart and our desire, or it becomes a decision based out of fear or out of victimness or out of our suffering and our pain. And
Mm.
so the idea is to recognize, if it takes a lot of brutal honesty to do the exercise, but to recognize at what point did we step away from our heart decision and take make a decision and take a course that was based on fear or based on what we believe we deserve out of our shame, or what we believed we should expect of ourselves because we don't feel good enough, or what we expect in a relationship because I'm not
Mhm.
lovable. And so at that point, that's the point where we can start our healing practice, because prior to that, we're very much connected to who we are, and we go with our soul, we go with our heart, we go with our intention and intuition, our desire, and we set out to have an experience. And then it's like getting to the edge of a cliff and we don't know who's going to catch us, or if we can trust the process. And then we make a decision totally based in fear, and that's where things kind of go astray in our life.
Awesome. I love that. I love this exercise in this book. Another thing I like about your book a lot is just all the great quotes you have in the book. I mean, almost on every page there's an awesome quote, and they're all very inspirational, and they go right hand in hand with the content. How did you go about choosing all of these great quotes?
Well, as I was writing and as I was needing inspiration and as I was, wanting to inspire, I just kind of hunted them down. Some of them came very organically. Some of them were my favorite quotes for my life, and some of them I hunted down. So
Mm,
the whole experience of the book, I mentioned at the very end, but I fear to use the word channeled because a lot of people get a misrepresentation of what that is. But there was a good deal of that going on
mhm,
from the
mhm,
from the onset, from the conception of the book. And while I was writing, there was certainly a part of me present, but there was also just one, I was on a hard deadline.
mm,
So I was like, I had to move quickly and through it. And there was a real part though that came from an energy that that is
mm,
not Leah Guy, although I'm part of it. But it was just, and I felt very led to those quotes. I felt very led to the emotional workouts, the spiritual mapping. It just, I hadn't been, plotting it out for years or anything. It just really organically came. So.
How does somebody who buys your book, how do they use this? Is this something they read from end to end, or what's the best way for somebody to get the most out of your book?
Well, I definitely think chapter 1 is a good read for anybody because it really addresses fear and the root of our issues with anxiety and fear and how we get disconnected from self. And after that, I mean, we can always stand to refresh ourselves, or if you have family or friends that are suffering with different things. But you can kind of look at the chapters, and they're topical as far as the major ways that we suffer. And there's lists in each chapter of symptoms, the physical symptoms and emotional symptoms. And so, if a person's curious about where they may be out of balance, or maybe what their root issue is, they could go right to the symptoms and see if which ones resonate with them, how many do they have, and what do they feel connected to, and then start there. Not everyone may need to read every chapter, but I feel like that the stories that are in each chapter were also just gifted to me through my wonderful clients and through experiences that I've had, and that I think that they really do help inspire people to allow, we all have, even though like shame may not be my biggest issue, if I have been carrying guilt around for a long time, or fear, there's an aspect of that low self-worth or self-loathing that goes along with those things. And so there's something I can learn in each chapter, even though it may not be my main issue. So that's kind of how I would use it.
Nice. I shared with Leah before our interview even began how much I love this book and how important I think it is to address what appear to be on the surface issues at the core, which is often some sort of emotional trauma, some sort of emotions that you're carrying within. And so I think this is really a tremendously important book for all of us, The Fearless Path. My question for you, Leah, I think I've run out of questions. Is there anything that you would like me to ask you about you or your book that I haven't done so yet?
No, you mentioned that the chapters, and there is definitely a connection of energy and chakras in the book and so forth. But it's also, I just think the book can be helpful for really anyone. Um, at the core of who we are, we may not understand all aspects of the various, and we may not be interested in meditation. Someone may not care to know about a chakra. It doesn't matter. But for me, it's important to have a more holistic viewpoint of our life. And that's why I included those things in the book. Because for me, holistic living, which we like to talk about a lot, holistic living is also not that, it's not done a lot, it's not really lived out. And it really is about addressing our physical health, balancing that with our mental health and emotional health, and with our spiritual health. And so I encourage anyone, even if you're just dipping your toes in or exploring different ideas or so forth, to check it out and to start, you know, the process of maybe opening your mind or seeking, I don't know, a different approach to your health and wellness.
Mhm.
It's impactful when we put those three things together. The energy shifts very nicely and much more fluidly than we're just trying to attack the mind, or we're just trying to meditate ourselves to enlightenment, or we're just trying to, you know, do a certain part to treat one aspect of our being. It really is a whole approach that we need.
Nice. I totally agree. I totally agree. So where can people get your book?
Well, it's on barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, target.com. It's on my site, I think, or at stores. The Barnes and Noble has it, and if they don't, you can request it. It's also available through Audible. There's an audio version of the book, and you know, most any place can get it. It's carried through all the major distributors. So.
You mentioned your website. I think maybe you have two websites, don't you? You want to talk about those a little bit?
Same one. It's either my name, leahguy.com, or modernsage.com.
Nice. Nice. What else would they find on your website other than your book?
I do Skype sessions for private meditation classes. I also do healing sessions or spiritual coaching sessions online. And then there's a lot of products that I formulated: chakra oils, aura sprays. We have crystals and sage and Palo Santo, and, you know, gifts and things on there. And the meditation CD is available to download there. And a bunch of goodies. There's videos, there's a blog. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I did check your websites out, and they are very helpful, very informative, and lots of great stuff on there. So I do suggest people check that out. Any final thoughts you want to share with the audience?
Not really. I mean, I recently did a video just in light of, you know, there's a lot of people struggling, and I've been one of those people, and we all struggle at certain times, but I just want to encourage anyone who is struggling with happiness, with peace, with feeling like they belong here, whether it's my book or me or you or whomever, just to reach out for help. You know, there's a lot of support, but it takes some courage to find the support and to own where we are in our life. So I just, it's hard to look at the news and see so many people struggling and taking their life or hurting other people. And I want to be an ambassador for health and wellness and healing. So I just want to encourage people to do that.
I love that. An ambassador for health and wellness and healing. That's kind of what Conscious Life News is about.
Right.
Not all the negative news. Let's get people healing. Let's get people living to their potentials. And I think your book, The Fearless Path, is really a book that should be on everybody's bookshelf, or even better yet, beside their bed. You can really open it up just about any page and get some really great pearls of wisdom. So it's been a real pleasure meeting you and getting a chance to talk with you. And I love your book. And I think that's all I have for today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
You're so welcome.